The courthouse doors creaked open as James Carter, a retired military legal advisor, stepped inside. Though age had softened his posture, his sharp eyes carried decades of discipline. He moved slowly, deliberately, every step a reminder of the battles fought, the laws studied, the justice defended. Pinned on his chest was a Medal of Honor, a gleaming testament to his service. But as soon as he entered, the judge's sharp voice cut through the silence. "Sir, this courtroom has a strict attire policy. That medal is not permitted. You'll need to remove it, or pay the fine." Murmurs rippled through the spectators. Some shifted uncomfortably, unsure why such a decorated veteran was being reprimanded over something he had earned through sacrifice. Others smirked, expecting Carter to argue or apologize. He did neither. Instead, he calmly reached for his wallet, retrieved a few bills, and placed them on the clerk's desk. His acceptance of the fine wasn't submission, it was patience, because Carter knew the real fight was just beginning. As he took his seat, the courtroom buzzed about the property dispute that had brought him there. His neighbor claimed his fence violated city regulations. An easy ruling, they assumed, but what they didn't realize was that James Carter wasn't just another elderly defendant. He was a man who had spent his life studying laws, enforcing justice, and never backing down from a fight worth winning. James. Carter sat calmly, his hands folded as the opposing party took the floor. His neighbor, Richard Vaughn, a man in his late 40s with neatly pressed clothes, spoke with confidence. His claim was simple. Carter's fence had extended beyond property boundaries and violated city regulations. An open and shut case, or so Vaughn thought. The judge turned to Carter. "Mr. Carter, do you have legal representation today, or?" Smiled slightly, shaking his head. "No, Your Honor. I'll be handling this myself." A few quiet chuckles echoed through the room. Vaughn smirked, arms crossed, ready to watch an elderly man struggle against the law. But Carter's steady posture gave no sign of defeat, only certainty. Instead of responding directly, Carter leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "Before proceeding, I'd like to request access to the city's official property records from 40 years ago." The room shifted. The judge furrowed his brow. 40 years ago? That far back? Carter nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. Those records should clear up an important legal matter before we continue." Murmurs spread through the audience. Vaughn's smug expression faltered. Why request old records? Could they actually be relevant? The judge hesitated before turning to the clerk. "Retrieve the archives." And with that, the tone of the case changed. James Carter wasn't here to beg for leniency. He wasn't here to plead his case like a desperate man clinging to his property. He was here to prove something bigger, and no one, not Vaughn, not the judge, not even the spectators, was ready for what came next. The courtroom holds its breath. As the archived property records arrive, thick dust-covered documents carrying decades-old legal agreements. James Carter moves slowly but with precision, flipping through them like a man who has done this before. The opposing party, Richard Vaughn, watches impatiently, arms crossed. "What exactly are we supposed to find in those old papers?" Carter ignores the irritation in Vaughn's voice. He stops at a worn document, lifting it with careful hands. "This," he says simply, passing it forward. The judge signals for the clerk to read the document aloud. The words spill into the courtroom. A forgotten property ruling from 40 years ago, one that granted Carter special grandfathered rights, AI, regulation that predates the current city zoning laws. In short, his fence was never in violation. The shift in energy is instant. Vaughn blinks. That must be outdated. His confidence wavers, but Carter remains calm. It was never repealed. The judge furrows his brow. Let's confirm that. The clerk rushes to retrieve the newer property laws, placing them beside the older ones. The comparison is clear. The city's newer regulations were never written to override the prior ones. Gasps ripple through the courtroom. The judge exhales sharply, flipping through the pages again as if hoping to find a mistake. But there is none. Vaughn stammers. That can't be right. Carter leans forward slightly. Legally, it is. For the first time, the opposing party realizes they may have already lost, and the judge, he now sees James Carter in an entirely different light. The courtroom sits in heavy silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on every person in the room. The judge flips through the old zoning law again, this time reading each word with careful precision. The opposing party, Richard Vaughn, clears his throat, trying to mask his unease. Your Honor, this law is outdated. It shouldn't apply anymore. James Carter folds his hands, his voice steady. Outdated? Perhaps. But still legally binding? Absolutely. The judge sighs, motioning for the clerk to search for any official repeal documents. Minutes pass. Papers shuffle. The clerk reads and rereads records, checking city archives with narrowed focus. Then, the moment of realization. The clerk looks up, face pale. There's no record of this law being repealed, Your Honor, the spectators whisper in shock. The law was never erased, just buried, forgotten, and ignored. The judge places his hands flat on his desk. Which means Mr. Carter's property is legally protected under an old but valid law. Richard Vaughn's face flushes. That's ridiculous. If every old law was upheld, we'd have chaos. James Carter lifts an eyebrow. Chaos? No, but justice? Yes, the law is meant to be followed, not conveniently overlooked. The judge exhales sharply, adjusting his posture. For the first time, it's clear. This case isn't going in the direction Vaughn had expected. The audience leans in, sensing that the entire balance of power in the courtroom has shifted. And Carter? He's only just getting started. The judge exhales slowly, tapping his fingers against the desk as he processes the unexpected turn of events. The courtroom feels charged, the weight of Carter's argument shifting the atmosphere entirely. Richard. Vaughn, now visibly frustrated, pushes forward. Your Honor, laws change. You can't possibly expect an outdated ordinance to carry the same weight as modern regulations. Carter, still composed, clasps his hands together. Unless it was formally repealed, it absolutely does. The judge rubs his chin, turning back to the clerk. Confirm again there is no official repeal? The clerk nods, tight-lipped, clearly realizing the gravity of the oversight. None, Your Honor. Silence. The spectators shift, whispering among themselves. Vaughn's lawyer fidgets, flipping through documents, searching for any defense. But the truth is clear. James Carter knows this law better than anyone in the room. The judge looks at Carter for a long moment before finally asking, Mr. Carter, where did you learn all of this? Carter leans back slightly. 40 years in military. Legal advisory, Your Honor. A beat of stunned silence, then hushed gasps. The realization ripples through the courtroom. This man, once dismissed as an elderly defendant, had decades of experience in law, strategy, and justice. The judge nods. Thoughtful now. So you're not just familiar with property law, you've spent your life interpreting regulations at the highest level. Carter's lips lift into the faintest of smiles. That would be a fair assessment. For the first time since the trial began, the judge isn't just listening to Carter, he's learning from him, and Vaughn, He's finally beginning to realize he may have already lost. The courtroom is no longer indifferent. Everyone is paying attention now. The judge, once stiff and uninterested, now studies James Carter with curiosity. The opposing party, Richard Vaughn, stands tense, realizing his argument is falling apart, fast. Carter sits calmly, his expression unwavering. He's spent a lifetime in legal battles, just not in courtrooms like this. His experience in military law, handling wartime negotiations and property disputes, had taught him one thing above. Justice is never about who speaks the loudest, it's about who knows the law best. The judge sighs, rubbing his forehead. Mr. Carter, I have to admit, I misjudged you. From the moment you walked in, I assumed this case would be routine. Carter lifts his chin slightly. That seems to happen often, Your Honor. A few quiet chuckles ripple through the room. Vaughn, sensing he's losing control, forces his way back into the conversation. Your Honor, regardless of the past ordinance, it's still unreasonable to allow an outdated law to dictate modern rulings. Carter waits a beat longer than necessary, then leans forward slightly. Are we ruling based on feelings, Mr. Vaughn, or on legal precedent? The jab is subtle, but sharp. A murmur spreads among the spectators. Vaughn says nothing. The judge watches Carter carefully. I have one more question, Mr. Carter. Carter nods, waiting. That medal you wore into the courtroom, what does it signify? The question is not a reprimand this time. It's genuine curiosity. Carter exhales slowly, running his fingers over his coat sleeve. It signifies service, Your Honor, and resilience. He pauses, then adds, resilience in the face of being underestimated, again and again. The judge nods. The courtroom is silent, hanging on to his words. James Carter wasn't just here to defend his property. He was here to teach a lesson. About law, justice, and the danger of underestimating the wrong person. And for the first time since the trial began, the judge respects him. The judge adjusts his posture, the rigid authority softened by intrigue. The courtroom, once indifferent, now feels alive with shifting energy. James Carter is no longer just a defendant. He's proving himself to be something much more formidable. Richard Vaughn clenches his jaw, desperate to regain control. Your Honor, this is absurd. The city wouldn't overlook something this significant. The judge raises an eyebrow. And yet, here we are. Carter sits back slightly, his gaze unwavering. It's not about oversight, Mr. Vaughn. It's about accountability. Murmurs ripple through the spectators. The legal students in the back scribble notes furiously, realizing they're watching something rare. A man without a lawyer outmaneuvering. Professionals with nothing but patience and knowledge. Vaughn tries one last time. Your Honor, if we allow this precedent to stand, we'll create unnecessary complications. Carter doesn't move. Complications or corrections? Another beat of silence. The judge sighs, rubbing his chin, staring at the undeniable truth before him. The property laws, the forgotten ordinance, the failure of the system to repeal it, all of it stands. And James Carter stands with it. Mr. Carter, the judge finally says, you've presented one of the most thorough legal defenses I've seen without a lawyer present. This case isn't going in the direction I expected. The courtroom stirs. Vaughn stiffens. Carter simply nods. It rarely does, Your Honor. And with that, the balance of power shifts completely. James Carter is no longer defending himself. He's already winning. The judge shifts in his chair, exhaling as he considers the depth of James Carter's arguments. The once dismissive skepticism is gone, replaced by respect. Carter remains composed, his posture unchanged. He has seen this shift many times before, the moment where perception transforms. Richard Vaughn, now visibly uncomfortable, pushes forward. Your Honor, this case should be ruled based on modern interpretations, not technicalities. The judge taps his fingers against the desk. Mr. Vaughn, legal precedent isn't a technicality. It's the foundation of the system. The audience murmurs. Vaughn's lawyer stiffens but says nothing. The judge turns toward Carter. Mr. Carter, when you walked into this courtroom, I assumed this was a simple case. I see now, I was mistaken. Carter lifts his chin slightly but does not gloat. People often mistake patience for weakness, Your Honor. It's an easy error to make. The judge nods slowly, absorbing those words. The courtroom that once dismissed Carter now watches him with admiration. The judge clears his throat. Let's cut to the core of this. The city failed to repeal the old law. Your property rights were never actually violated, correct? Carter simply nods. The judge exhales sharply, shaking his head. Then we're looking at a case that never should have existed in the first place. A ripple of shock spreads through the spectators. Vaughn stiffens. Carter remains still. Because now, even the judge is acknowledging the truth. And the case is slipping through Vaughn's fingers faster than he can stop it. The judge exhales deeply, flipping through the legal documents one last time, as if searching for something, anything, that might undo James Carter's argument. But nothing appears. The truth stands firm. The opposing party, Richard Vaughn, grips the edge of the desk, waiting for a miracle that isn't coming. The judge sits up straighter, adjusting his robes. Mr. Carter, based on the laws provided, the documents reviewed, and the clear oversight by the city officials, I find that you are fully within your legal rights. Gasps scatter through the courtroom. Vaughn's face turns ashen. Carter remains steady because he knew this was the only logical outcome. The judge continues, this case is dismissed. Mr. Carter's property rights remain intact. The murmurs in the room grow, and Vaughn instinctively tries to protest. Your Honor, if we allow... The judge raises a hand, silencing him. That's enough, Mr. Vaughn. You built this case on a flawed premise. And frankly, I'm disappointed. It ever reached trial. A stunned silence. Then, the judge turns toward the clerk. Additionally, refund Mr. Carter the fine he paid earlier. The spectators exchange glances. A complete reversal. Carter exhales slowly, buttoning his coat. The Medal of Honor, once the center of controversy, now carries an entirely new meaning in this courtroom. As he moves toward the door, the weight of his victory is clear. This was never just about property. It was about justice, resilience, and proving that underestimation is a dangerous mistake. James Carter steps out of the courthouse, the weight of his victory settling over him like a quiet triumph. The day feels different, not because he won, but because he proved something greater than the law itself. A reporter rushes to meet him at the steps. Mr. Carter, what do you make of today's ruling? Carter pauses, watching the sun dip behind the city skyline. Then, with the measured patience that had carried him through decades of service, he answers, Justice isn't about power. It's about knowing the truth and knowing when to stand by it. The reporter scribbles down his words. The spectators from the trial, once indifferent, now watch him with admiration, as if realizing they had witnessed something rare and unforgettable. Some battles are fought with weapons. Some, like today, are fought with wisdom. Either way, James. Carter had spent his life proving that victory doesn't always come from force. Sometimes it comes from knowing the law better than those who enforce it. And that is a legacy that won't be forgotten.